Shalom, everyone. Today is the 35th day of Omer. We'll be in the 24th chapter of the book of Genesis. Right in verse 1 begins with the words, Abraham was now old. Every time I read that, I find it kind of ironic. This is a man who at 100 years old conceived a child. Okay? And then now that child is grown and is walking in faith and is doing right before the Creator in so many ways. And now it says Abraham was now old. I believe that gives a lot of credence to something I was told a lot as a child, that I tend to believe less and less from experience as I get older, as that age is just a number, because I feel myself getting older. I feel my joints creaking and my bones hurting, and I feel the pain of age getting worse all the time. And Melech back there shaking his head, saying, thinking, son, you don't know what you're talking about yet, given 30 years. And he's right. But I find it interesting that 120-some probably years old, 130 years old, somewhere in there, it says now Abraham was old. Okay, and so I believe he was a man young at heart to live that long and finally feel old. It says, advanced in years, and Yehovah had blessed Abraham in all things. Notice it didn't say some things. You know, Abraham was not a man who had an easy life. A lot of times when we read and hear about people being blessed, we think it means things always go well for them the way that they would have it go. But it strikes me here, Abraham had actually had a very difficult life. A lot of it he brought on himself. He had to leave his father's house. He had to leave behind the life that he knew. He had to travel far away, trust in the voice of a creator no one else in the world was listening to closely at the time. He'd made mistakes. He'd endangered his family. He'd paid the consequences for that. But it says that Elohim had blessed Abraham in all things. I think there's a message there for us that even the things that we think of as trials, even the things that we wish we didn't have to go through, even the things that we would pray, let this cup pass from my lips, and that we tend to forget to pray the rest of that prayer, but thy will be done. I think Abraham lived that life. I think there were many things that passed in front of him that he would have had not come his way if he had chosen, but in the end, he knew that he was blessed to have lived through them. And Abraham said to the senior servant of his household. Remember, this is a man who had, a few chapters back, had 300 and some soldiers who answered to him. Some of them chieftains of their own tribes. But they answered to him, and if he had that many soldiers working for him, we know that he also had many servants who weren't soldiers. So this man is a man he holds in high regard because he's the chief. Maybe the one who's been with him the longest, maybe the one he feels the closest to and trusts the most, but he's the chief of all the servants. He's not just the guy who happened by when he decided to have this conversation. It says, who had charge of all that he owned. Basically, he is the Yusef of this situation. The Daniel, the Mordecai of the situation. Put your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by Yehovah, the Elohim of heaven and the Elohim of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanite, among whom I dwell. but will go to the land of my birth and get a wife for my son Yitzhak. This is a passage I hear twisted a lot, especially in this day when people talk about gender identity as though it's a choice, as though I can be born male and decide to be female and that's okay, or vice versa, or any of these other supposed genders that they've invented in the last few years. And one of the places people in favor of that try to go, even so-called quote-unquote Christians, who now are jumping on the bandwagon of this gender morphing movement, say, well, don't you know that Abraham was bisexual? That's why he made his servant reach under his thumb. And they try to make it a very, very unholy thing. So I sat down and researched this a bit because I never really understood why he did it. But I thought, you know what? I want to know. I want to know so that when people say this, I can say, no, what's really going on is this. And what I found in several rabbinic commentaries is that this was the tradition that Indian Jews, or the old Indian colonies and up through the subcontinent, still practice this today. When your tribal leader, your elder, your whoever has authority over you, places you under a charge, and when that charge seems so great that it is unlikely that you will be able to succeed in it, and yet it is the charge that you are being given, you allow that man to sit on your right hand. Has nothing to do with anything perverse. One commentary said you might just as easily allow him to stand on your right hand. It is a sign of submission. It is a sign saying that I am under you, you are over me, I submit to your authority. And another commentary said something similar, and it said that in the Hebrew tradition, that this was no different than a servant saying to the master, I will serve you as though I issued from you, as though I were your son. I will do this for you, not because I think it's easy or possible, but because I love you and respect you as though you were my father. There's nothing perverse about that. And yet that's what people try to make this passage into. And they've been doing it longer than I've been alive, probably longer than Melik's been alive. People have been trying to turn this into a perverse thing. And it's not. It's a beautiful thing. But interestingly, he tells him, don't take a wife for my son. Talk about trust, letting someone else pick your son's wife. Don't take a wife for my son from among the daughters of this land. Go back to my father's people. Now remember, he was told by Elohim to come out from his father's people because they weren't holy enough. And yet we know that Terah, his father, had taken his family and moved out of where they were from, even following the call, but didn't make the full journey. Okay? And so when Abraham took Sarah and went off to follow Yehovah more closely, they were leaving behind a people who to some degree knew the Elohim he had chosen to serve. Not completely, they didn't have the full revelation, that's obvious. But they knew that there was one Elohim, the Elohim of heaven and earth, and they were going to go and serve him. And they did to what degree they understood. And he says, don't take a daughter for my son from among these idol worshippers. Don't take a daughter of Baal to be a daughter of Yehovah. Go back to my father's people and find a wife there for my son. And the servant said to him, what if the woman does not consent to follow me to this land? Shall I then take your son back to the land from which you came? Abraham answered him, on no account must you take my son back there. Yehovah, the Elohim of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from my native land, who promised me on oath, saying, I will assign this land to your offspring. He will send his angel before you, and you will get a wife for my son from there. And if the woman does not consent to follow you, you shall then be clear of this oath to me, but do not take my son back there. You see, even though Abraham knew that the women of Canaan, the Canaanite women, were not what Yitzhak needed for wife material because they were idol worshippers and would lead his heart toward idol worship. Even though he knew that Yitzhak was better off finding a wife among his father's people, he also knew that if Yitzhak went and lived among his father's people, it would only be a matter of time before that progressive sanctification that he had gained living under Abraham's teaching would be lost, because he would be drawn backward into a less righteous lifestyle that Abraham had left behind. He said, no, the only way that my son can have a wife is if you go to that other camp in that other land and you bring the woman to him. Okay? When you bring the woman to him, then she will see righteousness and she will dwell under the authority of my son as her husband. And that is how the promise will be fulfilled. And I believe this so strongly, he says, that I know that my Elohim will send his angel before you, will help you find this woman, and you will bring this woman back. And if that's not going to happen, then my son just won't have any children. And the promise can end here. Because as much as I want this whole land to belong to my descendants, I don't want it to belong to my descendants who worship pagan idols. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of his master Abraham and swore to him as bidden. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and set out, taking with him all the bounty of his master. And he made his way to Aram Naharaim, to the city of Nahor. Everybody remembers Nahor, correct? Nahor, we talked about a few chapters back, was who? Was Abraham's brother. And Terah brought his family out from the Chaldeans. They settled in Nahor, probably because it was the land named after his son, Abraham's brother, Lot's father. And he says, we're going to dwell in this land. And Abraham says, no, I'm taking my wife Sarah and I'm going farther along. I'm going into the promised land. He didn't know that's what it was yet, but he knew that he had to go and follow the voice of Elohim. So he goes back to the land of Nahor and he finds the family of Terah still dwelling in the land of Nahor. He made the camels kneel down by the well outside the city at evening time, the time when women come out to draw water. And he said, O Yehovah Elohim of my master Abraham, grant me good fortune this day, and deal graciously with my master Abraham. Here I stand by the spring as the daughters of the townsmen come out to draw water. Let the maiden to whom I say, please lower your jar that I may drink, and who replies, drink, and I will also water your camels, let her be the one whom you have decreed for your servant Yitzhak. Okay? A huge thing right there. But you know what I get from that? There's a whole lot of specifics. You know what this man had learned from Abraham? He had learned not only to pray, but to pray specifically. He had learned to pray Not only for healing, but for specific healing. Not only for rain, but for rain in the right season. He had learned how to pray for what was needed at the time specifically, and in this case, he was praying, saying, "Don't let me take the wrong woman." He was saying, when I go out here, let me pray that I'm going to pray this prayer, and when I go out here and I ask these women, lower your vessel, draw it up, let me drink, please. Let there be one woman who doesn't just offer me a drink of water, but also offers to water all of these 10 camels. You know, mainline preachers like to turn the 10 camels into the 10 commandments, and they like to say, oh, this is just a sign of righteousness, and they brush over it. No. You know what 9 is in Hebrew numerology? 9 is the number of completion. That's why when it turns over, we go from 9 to 1 0, and the 1 holds the place, and the 0 becomes nothing, and then we add to it. 9 is the last actual real number in Hebrew numerology. And yet he brought 10 camels. He brought not only a completion, but one more. And he prayed that there would be one woman who would give water not only to him, but to the completion of the caravan and one more. He was looking for a specific characteristic in the wife for Yitzhak. And some would say he was looking for a woman who would work until the work was done, and maybe he was. But I think he was looking for a woman of devotion, a woman of dedication, a woman who was a servant to no end, who would sit under the authority of the master who was soon to be his master, who would inherit the right to be his master. Thereby shall I know that you have dealt graciously with my master. In other words, he's saying, Yehovah, if I don't see this, I will know that this isn't the right thing. Now, he might have been planning, if I don't see it tonight, I'm coming back tomorrow. He doesn't say that. He had scarcely finished speaking when Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor, came out with her jar on her shoulder. Now let's think about this, who this is, because mainline preachers, and the English a lot of times will say that Rebekah was Isaac's cousin. She wasn't exactly his cousin as we think about it today. She is the granddaughter of Nahor. Okay? That means she is the daughter of Abraham's niece. This is Lot's niece. Does that make sense? She is Abraham's great niece, so she is actually Yitzhak's cousin one time removed. And some people say, well, that's hair splitting. Not exactly. Because when we're tracing genealogy, we need to know who we are, we need to know where we are, and we need to know our relationship to the other people in our clan, in our tribe, in our nation. The maiden was very beautiful, a virgin whom no man had known. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up. The servant ran toward her and said, please, let me sip a little water from your jar. Drink, my lord, she said. Now some people look over this and don't think anything of it. The first few times I read it, I didn't think anything of it too. And then one day it hit me Rebekah says to the servant of Abraham, drink, my Lord. And we are told that look for the righteousness in the woman. We will find the woman who says to her husband that he is her Lord. And we learn that from Sarah, because that's what she said to Abraham. Okay? And women, in the Brit Hadash, believing women are told to be like Sarah, to be her spiritual daughters, and say to their husbands, my Lord. Okay? This was not her husband or her husband to be, and yet she was a submissive, gentle woman. Put aside all of her other characteristics. She was a submissive, beautiful from the inside woman who said to this man she had never met, drink, my Lord, was a servant to him. She said, and she quickly lowered her jar upon her hand and let him drink. When she had let him drink his fill, she said, I will also draw for your camels until they finish drinking. You know, if he had not prayed that specific prayer, they'd have to have a 2-hour-long conversation before he goes anywhere else. I'm saying he's going to have to ask her all kinds of stuff about her parentage, about their parents, about who her cousins are, about is anybody in your family unrighteous? What kind of idols do you pray to? What's going on? You know, what's your dowry price? Okay, he's going to have to ask all those questions. He doesn't have to now because he asked the Creator. He says, "Show me the one by showing me this about her." And immediately, here she is. Quickly emptying her jar into the trough, she ran back to the well to draw, and she drew for all his camels. You notice it doesn't say for the 9. It doesn't say for the number of completion. And she said, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to go get somebody else to help with the other one. She doesn't run back and get her parents' servants. She waters all of the camels. The man, meanwhile, stood gazing at her, silently wondering whether Yehovah had made his errand successful or not. Where does that come from? He asked specifically, if there's a woman for my master's son here, let these things happen, let this be the one. These things happen, we're all reading and saying, well, she's the one. And he says, so I wonder. Well, 2 things I think are going on here. One, he's got that human tendency to see all the facts in front of him and still second guess things. And number 2, we're dealing with a man who's super careful because he doesn't want to read too much into things and bring back the wrong woman. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold nose ring weighing a half shekel and 2 gold bands for her arms, 10 shekels in weight. Pray tell me, he said, whose daughter are you? Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? She replied, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. All right. I guarantee you, this servant of Abraham, his most trusted right-hand guy, knew who Nahor was, knew who Milcah was, knew who Bethuel was. And enough years have transpired, Abraham may not have had a clue who Rebekah was. But I guarantee you this servant knew who those others were. And she went on, there is plenty of straw and feed at home, and also room to spend the night. The man bowed low in homage to Yehovah and said, Blessed be Yehovah, the Elohim of my master Abraham, who has not withheld his steadfast faithfulness from my master. For I have been guided on my errand by Yehovah to the house of my master's kinsman. You know, in criminal justice, we always have a saying, 1 thing is suspicious, 2 might be a coincidence, and 3 is when you go get the warrant. You know, sometimes I think we should apply that to understanding Elohim's will. One of my early books, The Battle Lines of Faith, I coined a term. I said, there's in my world, there's no such thing as coincidence. There's guidance. That is, there's my Elohim giving me guidance. And when I start to see everything fall into place, perfectly, I need to stand back and say, wow, what a great Elohim I serve. And he says, there's no other way, there's no other logical answer to why did I pray this prayer, and before I finished praying it, the answer was brought to me, and she's the daughter of my master's kinsman. The maiden ran and told all this to her mother's household. Now Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. Laban ran out to the man at the spring when he saw the nose ring and bands on his sister's arms, and when he heard his sister Rebekah say, "Thus the man spoke to me." Now, a lot of people want to read this and say he was a protective brother. Want to make sure she wasn't being taken advantage of. I don't think so. Because we're going to read about Laban farther down the road. We're going to find out some things about Laban's character. Now, I'm not going to give you spoilers if you don't know the story. Everybody here should. But if you know the story of Laban down the road and how he deals with his nephew, Yaakov, I think he saw his sister walk in and say, "This man came and said he wants to take me to marry his master's servant, and look at this gold you gave me." I think he saw that gold and he wanted to see what kind of gold, what more gold was in that caravan. I don't think he was worried about his sister one bit, because that doesn't fit his character. He went up to the man who was still standing beside the camels at the spring. "Come in, O blessed of Yehovah," he said. "Why do you remain outside when I have made ready the house and a place for the camels?" So the man entered the house and the camels were unloaded. I wonder if the camels were unloaded, were the things they were carrying gone through. I'm sorry, I just have to wonder because we know how Laban is a few decades down the road. The camels were given straw and feed, and water was brought to bathe his feet and the feet of the men with him. But when food was set before him, he said, "I will not eat until I have told my tale." He said, "Speak then." "I am Abraham's servant," he began. Yehovah has greatly blessed my master, and he has become rich. He has given him sheep and cattle, silver and gold, male and female servants, camels and asses. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore my master a son in her old age, and he has assigned to him everything he owns. Now my master made me swear, saying, "You shall not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanite, in whose land I dwell. But you shall go to my father's house, to my kindred, and get a wife for my son." And I said to my master, "What if the woman does not follow me?" He replied to me, "Yehovah, whose ways I have followed, will send his angel with you and make your errand successful, and you will get a wife for my son from my kindred, from my father's house. Thus only shall you be freed from my adjuration. If, when you come to my kindred, they refuse you, only then shall you be freed from my adjuration." I want you all to listen up, especially you young girls who are not married. Do I have your attention? This man did not just come in and say, "I have found the right woman," and take her away. See, that's how the world does it today. The man comes in and says, "I like this one. You want to get married?" She says, "Yes." They go do worldly other ways. They don't get married before elders or even in front of a judge. They just go do what they do. And that man never comes and speaks to her father or her brothers or whoever has authority over her and say, "I desire to marry your daughter, your sister, or whatever," okay? And get tested to see if he is a good fit for her. And the world will tell you, young ladies, that you don't have to abide by that. When I met my wife, I just wanted to sit down, have dinner, and talk to her. And you know what she said? She said, "You'll have to meet my father." And you know what I said? Not what every other guy she ever said that to. Every other guy was like, "Oh, maybe I can meet him later. Let's just go, oh, well, don't worry about it." I said, "Is he a believer?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Well, bring him along." I asked my future father-in-law on a date. Okay? Now that sounds strange to a lot of people. But I promise you that when I said that, I not only earned the respect of my future wife, showing her I'm not just playing games, I'm serious here. I earned the respect of my future father-in-law because he said, "This is a young man who understands the right way to handle things, and he understands that a young girl's heart can be easily misled, and that it is the right and the responsibility of her father to make certain judgments." I want you to think about that as you start getting a little older and boys start showing interest in you. Boys want to spend time with you. Your answer should be, "You need to come meet my father. You need to come meet the elders of our congregation. You need to sit with them, and they need to judge you to be worthy of me." And that's really how you should look at it. Because our society teaches us that the social structure out there teaches that young women should just grab hold of whatever man they can find. I tell you, that's part of why our society is such a mess today. Young men need to be, if they are truly interested in you for any right reasons, they need to be willing to sit down with your father, your brother, the elders of your congregation, and be judged as to whether or not they are going to be grow up to be the type of man who's going to care for you, nurture you, and love you the way that you need to be. I came today to the spring and I said, "O Yehovah Elohim of my master Abraham, if you would indeed grant success to the errand on which I am engaged, as I stand by the spring of water, let the young woman who comes out and to draw, and to whom I say, 'Please let me drink a little water from your jar,' and who answers, 'You may drink, and I will also draw for your camels,' let her be the wife whom Yehovah has decreed for my master's son." I had scarcely finished praying in my heart when Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder and went down to the spring and drew. And I said to her, "Please give me a drink." She quickly lowered her jar and said, "Drink, and I will also water your camels." So I drank, and she also watered the camels. Catch that? It wasn't as important to him what she said she would do as it was the fact that she did. A lot of people will speak as though they are righteous, and a few people will do the righteous thing. I inquired of her, "Whose daughter are you?" And she said, "The daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor, whom Milcah bore to him." And I put the ring on her nose and the bands on her arms. Most people don't get this. That's basically, in that time period, the tribal equivalent of an engagement ring. Okay? He was showing her, "You have been committed to doing what was righteous, and I am committing to taking you home to the son of my master." Then I bowed low in homage to Yehovah and blessed Yehovah, the Elohim of my master Abraham, who led me on the right way to get the daughter of my master's brother for his son. Now, that's misleading. English says the daughter of my master's brother. And as I was researching it, I get where they're getting that, but she's actually the granddaughter of his brother. But that's kind of like when it says Yeshua, son of David, Yeshua ben David, Yusuf ben David. They weren't literally his sons, but they were male descendants. Okay, and that's really what we're talking about here. The female descendant of my master's brother. Technically the granddaughter of his master's brother. And now, if you mean to treat my master with true kindness, tell me, and if not, tell me also, that I may turn right or left. In other words, I'm here for a purpose. I am not here to mess around. I didn't come here to play games. I came here to get a wife for my master's son. I believe that this is her. Here are my reasons. Here's my reasoning. Here are the signs that I have seen. And if you are agreeable to this, tell me. If not, I need to get going because I have a wife to find for my master's son. He was still a man about the business of his master. Then Laban and Bethuel answered, the matter was decreed by Yehovah. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Okay? Now here are two men who, as far as we know, Bethuel never became a complete follower of Yehovah. We don't know for sure. It doesn't say that he never did, but he didn't make the completion of the journey. He didn't make the completion of the journey into the promised land. And yet they say, if it's decreed by the Elohim of Abraham, we can't say good or bad. It's just what it is. Here is Rebekah before you. Take her and go and let her be a wife to your master's son, as Yehovah has spoken. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed low to the ground before Yehovah. The servant brought out objects of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. And he gave presents to her brother and her mother. Then he and the men with him ate and drank, and they spent the night. When they arose next morning, he said, give me leave to go to my master. But her brother and her mother said, let the maiden remain with us some 10 days, then you may go. Okay, I want you to think about this. Her father and her brother approved the marriage. Her brother and her mother received gifts. Who is it who says, let her stay a little longer? It's the brother and the mother. The father has already surrendered his right to authority over her. And he has said, I'm transferring that authority to you, servant of Abraham, to again transfer to the son of Abraham, Yitzhak. Go about your business. Do what you got to do. This is the man who at least was dealing righteously in the situation. But the mother and the brother got the gold and the silver and the gifts. And now they want her to stay 10 more days. How many camels were there? There were 10. How many days did they want her to stay? 10. Something tells me that they've just gotten through the offloading of the first camel. And they say, why don't you stay 10 more days? Let's see what's on those other camels. Y'all see why I'm not trusting Laban too much. He said to them, do not delay me now that Yehovah has made my errand successful. Give me leave that I may go to my master. And they said, let us call the girl and ask for her reply. They called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? Did she have an option? Really? They're trying to make her think she has an option. Her father has done the deal. She is to be Yitzhak's wife. But her brother and mother are asking her, are you going to go with this guy? We're supposed to stay a little longer? You know what they're thinking? They're thinking she's going to feel pressured to do what they want. And I see this in families all the time. Parents who say, yes, we're giving our daughter. Father said, I'm giving my daughter to you. And then somebody else in the family is like, oh, don't go follow him. Don't go do the things he's telling you to do. Keep our family traditions. Do things the way we would have you do them. Mothers who expect their daughters to come back and clean their home for them after they're married. Not saying it's bad for a daughter to do that. My daughter has cleaned her mother's house many times since we were married. But unless her mother is disabled, that's her job. And my wife's job is to keep my home. Does that make sense? And yet they're trying to supersede that. They're trying to overstep that and say, we gave you in marriage, but just stay here so we can gather a little wealth off of it. Young ladies, listen up. Listen. If your father ever gives you away in marriage and someone in your family tells you, don't do what your husband wants you to do, come back and do things with us, they're wrong. I don't care if it's your father. You understand? When you are given in marriage to a man, you are that man's wife. And that is the end of the discussion. You understand that? They ask her the question thinking she's going to side with them. When they say, well, you go with this man? She said, I will. So they sent off their sister Rebekah and her nurse along with Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, O sister, may you grow into thousands of myriads. May your offspring seize the gates of their foes. What a blessing. And you notice nowhere in here, and it may have happened after he told the story of why he was there, the servant may have told how Abraham was blessed and is going to get the entire kingdom, the entire land. Okay? So maybe this falls into that, but it doesn't say that they even knew that. And they prayed a blessing over the future wife of the son of Abraham, that her descendants would have a piece of that promise that was given to Abraham. Then Rebekah and her maids arose, mounted the camels, and followed the man. So the servant took Rebekah and went his way. Yitzhak had just come back. Now, this is one of those times when Torah does like a time jump. Okay, we don't know exactly how long it took them to get from the city of Nahor back into Canaan, but we know it didn't happen in the 2 seconds that it takes to jump from one line to the next. Okay? We know they were on the road for a while. So they've been journeying. It's dusty. They're tired. They're probably hungry. It says, Yitzhak had just come back from the vicinity of Beer Lahai-Roi, for he was settled in the region of the Negev. Okay, so we're down in the wilderness area. We're in the southern portion. The place where today they send the toughest units of the Israeli Defense Force to learn survival skills. That's where he was going. And Yitzhak went out walking in the field toward evening, and looking up, he saw camels approaching. Raising her eyes, Rebekah saw Yitzhak. He saw camels coming. She saw her future husband. She alighted from the camel and said to the servant, who is that man walking in the field toward us? And the servant said, that is my master. So she took her veil and covered herself. We talked earlier about how Rebekah epitomized the servant heart. She did what was righteous. She didn't just say what was righteous, she did it. Here is a woman who understands modesty. Here is a woman who set the standard for every Jewish bride after her. And in mainline churches, they do the same thing. You ever see a woman walk down the aisle and she has a veil over her face? And when she comes to her groom, he's allowed to lift the veil and see his bride. This is the beginning of that tradition in the Jewish faith among the Hebrew people. She put the veil over her face. The servant told Yitzhak all the things that he had done. Yitzhak then brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he took Rebekah as his wife. Yitzhak loved her and thus found comfort after his mother's death. I want you to think about that. There was no ceremony, there was no meeting with the judge, there was no going to the courthouse, there was no signing anything. The deal of marriage, the agreement to the marriage had been made. The bride was presented to the groom. He took her into the tent. Today would be the house. He removed the veil from her face, and she became his wife. But today, the world says you can live together and do whatever you want, and it's acceptable. And if you decide you don't like that guy anymore, you women can just run off. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible says, young ladies, listen up, that when you do something like that with a man, you're his wife. Is that understood? Is that understood? I don't know how much more serious I can make that statement. Do we have a midrash? Yes.
Are you saying she had no choice at all? Rebecca? At all?
After the agreement was made? No. But she heard the servant's story, and she took the servant back to her father's house and introduced them. Okay? She had that choice. But once the agreement was made between the father and the servant, biblically speaking, done.
But did you press her on the floor after?
After.
What she said no.
We had already discussed it. She was agreeable. Well, I wouldn't have talked to him if she wasn't agreeable. Yes. Just like Rebecca had the choice whether or not to take the servant back to her father's house. She could have said, I'm not interested. And the servant would have turned, as he said, to the right or to the left.
I'm pretty sure that, I mean, I would think that if she was disagreeable to that, that would have been brought up while they were all discussing that night when he got there, got into the house.
Well, I think if she was disagreeable, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Even if she brought him to their house, because I have a different take, a little bit different take on this. It's talks about I agree with the wall thing because of how they've been, but also because it was an armband. It probably had the insignia of Abraham. And because of that, he knew that it was, or something denoting that it was from him, and that he should treat his master, his servant well, because it's Abraham's servant, it's his kinsman, and if he is, you got to think about how long Abraham had lived and everything that had happened, and all the, basically all the fame that he had gotten in the surrounding nations and his reputation. A lot of that probably reached back to Quran. They had heard about this, and then he probably thought, I need to treat his servant well, or Abraham might show up with an army, ready to burn my house down. You know what I mean?
For your city.
Or your city. So, or at least take Laban out and straighten him up because, you know, it's Laban. But
I don't disagree with that, but if the whole purpose was the insignia of Abraham, and I'm sure there's quite a good likelihood that it had something or tribal significance or something.
I don't know exactly.
Okay, but if that was it, why wouldn't the servant have just warned it and said, look, I'm going to Abraham, okay? Instead, he put it on her, and the research that I've done shows that that was kind of the equivalent of an engagement ring today, saying that there's a commitment.
Probably because in his heart he knew that it was already decided, even though he wasn't sure at first. He knew that once he knew who she was, that there's a prayer that he had prayed,
Right.
and literally came true. Literally was granted by Yahweh. Then, you know, so yeah, I just it's a long chapter. There's a lot in this chapter.
There is.
I was reading that when I was reading it earlier. I was like, wow, I did not know this chapter being this long. But it's a good chapter. It has a lot of good insight, not just for young women, but for young men as well.
No?
Actually, this is my own thought, was that if her DNA, that the whole thing, her DNA for her to accept I her husband. If you could, really, she could have said no. I mean, because it's already.
It was in the plan.
It's predestined.
Right.
According to foreknowledge.
I mean, you can laugh about that if you want, but I mean, think about it.
I'm not laughing. I believe it was the plan.
And think about it, you know, isn't it possible that within our DNA, God put the in right now,
Oh, yeah.
there, and there is that point that
He's numbered our days and the hairs on our heads.
right, yeah.
Anybody else? Yes?
It's a song by Cassie Cranzer right there, standing again my life waiting for the other side. I know exactly what it's going to be, exactly how it's going to happen. He's already there.
Even modern wedding ceremonies.
Yeah.
A lot have, yeah. But that's where most people are used to seeing the veil is in a traditional church wedding.
And then the husband not, the bridegroom not signifying. All of that has to do with a lot of this here, and then is, you know, the wife, you know, being chaste, and then, like you said, you find short down the aisle and you find Mr. Veil. That all has a wonderful purpose. I mean, our traditions like this are wonderful, but the media has tried to destroy every bit of because they hate God.
But like Brother Jacob,
I know.
It's all.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Why would they put their honeymoon season on now?
Why would they not?
I believe
Part of his
the
inheritance.
media is getting the life directly from the
Maybe he was staying there because it made him. Maybe he was staying there because it made him feel close to her.
We're just, hey. I was just gonna say this is a really beautiful chapter and, yeah, really. It's like,